Hi there, this is Wormatty with a brief introduction to how to install and use VScripts. Where to put them? In the Team Fortress 2 directory, you have what I call the root asset DIRs, so you have materials, for instance, models, maps, and so on. Ooh, completely opposite. You also have one named scripts, and in there you'll want to create a folder named VScripts. However, if you're a Chad like me, use the custom directory. Just create a directory called My Assets if you want, and then have a set of completely isolated, separate, sexy root asset directories here, which you can use to keep them organized. So I've created one called scripts, and then I've got VScripts, and then I've got other subfolders for my own wonderful scripts. One's for Death Run, for instance, and then I've got Matty, which is just general purpose because I love myself so much. And I've got named ones for specific entities. So now you know where to install things. Let's have a look at using them. In Hammer, I shall use this very basic example of a button. Actually, no, I'll start over here. This trigger, every entity now has an entity scripts key value where you can apply a script to it. So for instance, this script is very special because when you use this thing, it puts you into third person, and when you leave, it puts you back into first person. And the way that works is it hooks the on start touch and on end touch outputs of this entity, and when you touch, it puts you into third person. When you finish touching, it takes you out of third person. A bit more complicated, but you understand. And if you look in Hammer there, you've got the name of the script, the path name, which is relative to VScripts. And you can see I've got Matty / not /, and then the full name of the script, including the file extension. You can enter multiple scripts, I believe, by putting a comma, but don't quote me on that one. Anyway, so the second way to do it is to use this dedicated entity named logic script. You can add the script files here, call it whatever you want, and then here you have a section for entering arbitrary values which the script can access. So for example, over here I've got a cool little game, math game. When you trigger it, it starts what is 8 minus 5? That's obviously 3. What is 4 times 4? Oh, it's 8, obviously. Ah, no, it's not! Damn! Oh, how could I be so foolish? Anyway, you get the idea. And in Hammer, these env scripts are used as placeholders for the spawn points for the text in the world. And I enter their target names in here. And I access these values specifically to get them. This entity group is actually the name of an array, which is supplied in the logic script's scope automatically by the game, and you can see the numbers here are these cells in that array. Very useful indeed. But over here, very basic one here, logic script value, logic script entity designed to display a simple training message. Oops. Look at that. So one press shows the message title, here's the body of the message, and another press gets rid of it. Fantastic. And if you look at this lovely button here, on in, it does run script code, which is an input which allows you to execute VScript code in line if you wish. But in our case, we're actually going to use it to execute or call the function display message, which belongs to this script. And within that function, we supply 2 arguments, one named message title, and the other named with the value of here's the body of the message. And these both strings, so they need to be wrapped in backticks, which is the Hammer equivalent of double quotes. And as you may know, Hammer doesn't like double quotes because if you put them in, it will break your VMF, so don't do that. And the second input it uses is call script function, and all that does is it just calls a script function with no arguments. You don't have to provide the brackets here, so don't do that. Fantastic. So let's look at a more complicated example. This over here, teleport players. What this does, as the name suggests, is it grabs a bunch of players and it teleports them into a grid formation around an entity. In this case, the entity is this item here. This is an info teleport destination named ITD1, although it can be any entity really. It could be a logic relay if you prefer, because they don't use edicts. And then in the outputs, I'm sending an input to this logic script entity named run script code, and as the two arguments, I'm providing a function that I created called test_get_all_players, open brackets, close brackets, which, as the name suggests, gets all players. And then in the second argument, I'm providing the entity that I wish the players to be teleported around. It's not necessarily the target name, it's the entity instance itself. So in order to find that, I need to use this special function or method, entities.findByName, and that finds an entity by its target name, open brackets, null, and that's the first entity that I wish to search from, because it iterates up from the index of whatever entity you wish to provide. That's useful if you're iterating across entities. So if you're wanting to search 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., and check each of them. But we're only interested in the very first results. So we're starting from null, and then in the second argument, you put in the target name of the entity that you want. In our case, it's ITD1, surrounded by backticks because it's a string. And you can also use the wildcard asterisk character in this function as well, which is very useful. But again, because I'm only doing this once, it's only going to provide the first result. So if I wanted to, I could replace the first argument with a function that I created, which gets all the players on a particular team. So we're going to type get team players, open brackets, and we're going to type constants dot etf team dot, and in all capital letters, tf_team_red, and this is a constant. It is equivalent to the integer value of the red team, which is 2, but it's better to use constants typically than using hard-coded values, just in case those values change, although that's unlikely. And then we're going to provide a comma, and the function that I created, getTeamPlayers, the second argument is an optional one. You can teleport all players, whether or not you can create an array of all players, whether or not they're alive or dead, or you can provide true, and that will only provide the players who are alive, and then we'll close brackets. So you can see that this parameter now is teleport to grid, getTeamPlayers, constants.etf_team.tf_team_red in all capital letters, and the case I think is sensitive. And then true for the second argument after a comma. Note that these aren't in backticks because these are not string values. They correspond to an integer value for this one, and that one is a Boolean value, which is either true or false. So we'll click apply, and we'll save that, and then we'll compile, and I shall meet you in Team Fortress 2 in a second, as soon as it's loaded. And Dabby Dozy, just spawning myself in as a pyro. Let's get some bots. And let's cancel waiting for players time. We'll fly over here. Whoop. Got lots of bots on either side, so if I press this button, boom! Only the red team is teleported, and the loser blue team are left behind. Yeah, take that. Fantastic. So that function that I used, getTeamPlayers, what is it and where did I pull it out from? So it lives in a special file I created called stocks.nut, and as the name suggests, it's an assortment of stock functions that I created that I can use in multiple scripts. So I've got special functions that I created for sending messages to teams, colouring the chat message using the team colour, displaying an annotation, a training annotation in the world, controlling who can see it, and then you can see we've got this wonderful function here called getTeamPlayers, and you can see the first value is the team number, the second one is an optional value, which is whether or not you only want to return alive players, and the return value is an array of player handles. You can see it iterates across all the players, checks the team, are they alive, yes or no, etc., adds them to the array. So how do I access that function? What do I need to do? If you look in teleport.nut, which is the file that I included in the VScripts entity for that demonstration, you can see at the very top here, it has a function named include script, and it has matty/stocks.nut. That's all we need to do, is just need to make sure that stocks.nut is installed in the matty file, or folder rather, which it is. And then when the game loads this script, because it's added to logic script file, entity, sorry, it will scan through it and go, I see you need to include matty/stocks, and it will include it automatically. So you don't have to add it to any entities or whatever. And the same goes for CompilePal. Its autopacker is very clever. It will read the script files that you're including, or you're adding, or using rather, and if it encounters the include script function, it will automatically pack those included scripts as well. And I think that's very clever.